Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my insane entitled neighbor hates the military and despises all veterans. When I am having a barbecue with my ex-military friends, she calls the police on us for noise violations. She ends up trespassing on my property and attacking me. This is why you should never mess with a veteran. Let's dive right into the story. I have found that people are generally respectful towards me for being a serviceman, and when I was forced to retire from the military, that respect and admiration never really changed. However, this story is not about those people. This is more about the type of person that for one reason or another dislikes the military. So this was a little while ago now, but it was soon after I retired from the military. I had lost my arm to an IED while I was working bomb disposal with my best friend Noura. She is a Belgian Malinois and the best sniffer going. She became my therapy dog during my physiotherapy and continues to be my closest companion next to my wife. When we first moved into our new place, it seemed nice enough. It was an open area with a lot of space between neighbors, but that did not get in the way of the sense of community. Everyone was really close, well, mostly everyone. I knew one of my neighbors pretty well, an elderly couple which was retired. They had been living in the same house since the day they got married. The other neighbor, who I shall call Karen for this, I would not meet until about a week later. She was off on a holiday or something. I was pre-warned about her though by the guy that lives across the road. He told me Karen was a pacifist. I have met plenty of pacifists in my time, even in the military, and they were always a source of good conversation. I just figured that she would be bending my ear whenever we met and drag me into long debates about human aggression or some such matter. But boy, was I in for a treat. The first time I met Karen, she shied away from me like I was some kind of predator, barely giving me a grunt of acknowledgement. I was fine with it though. There was enough space between us that we never really needed to mingle in any way. I will just keep to myself, and I was fine with that. A few days later, my wife had put some washing out, including my old military uniform, which I wanted to get cleaned up, pressed and framed. When I went out to get the washing in, I found my uniform missing from the line and unceremoniously dumped in the trash can. I figured it was probably kids that live about here. I was later informed that it was Karen, because of course it was. I went around there to ask her why she felt it was necessary to come onto my property and throw my stuff in the trash. What followed was a deep lecture about why I was the scum of the earth for wanting to go off to war and kill. People are welcome to their own opinion and all, but this was not the right way to express it, especially not when you trespass and vandalize other people's property. I warned her to stay away from me and my dog. That sent her off on a whole new tangent, and the insults flew fresh. I laughed when she said she was gonna report me for animal cruelty. After that, things died down a little bit and I was able to enjoy my time in relative peace. I say relative because every now and then Karen and I would cross paths. I would hear her mumbling disrespectful crap under her breath, telling me how I was gonna burn in hell and face punishment for all the lives I have taken. Not that I've ever so much as fired a rifle outside the ranges. I was bomb disposal and spent most of my time training Noura or at camp gates. I would pretty much put Karen from my mind and spend the next couple months concentrating on adjusting from military life to civilian and focusing on my physiotherapy. It was tough getting used to only having one arm, but man was it exciting to see where prosthetics were headed. It was at this time that Naru started to get sick. We took her to the vets and found out that it was food poisoning. She was eating some kind of bad meat. I did not understand as I checked the fresh stuff we get each week and none of it looked rank. We even asked the pet store about the stuff and they claimed that they had very stringent health and safety checks in place to ensure they only got the best stuff. Naru was still getting sick and we could not figure out why. We changed her diet several times and everything. Then the truth hit when I went out to mow the lawn and the blades caught on something. It smelled so bad. I don't know if you've ever smelled rotting meat before, but it has a very distinct and nasty odor. I did what any sane person would do. I posted up in the spare bedroom and watched. When I couldn't watch, I made sure to always do a clean sweep of the lawn. It took a couple of days, but I caught Karen throwing chunks of meat over the fence. I threw open the window and yelled down at her and got the police involved. They gave her a warning that was pretty frustrating. If she had tried to poison a person, she would have gone to jail. All I could do was hope it would be enough to get this woman to back off, but it didn't, obviously. During the height of summer, a lot of my mates from the military came over to see how I was doing and to generally party like we used to. I got a big barbecue set up and tons of food and beer. It was a blast, one of the best days of my life, and not just because all my buddies came over to show their support. We were doing some warm-up drinking in the morning, nothing crazy, mostly sitting around a fire pit and sharing stories and catching up. There was no music, no shouting or anything. There were even kids about and several dogs, but they were not overly excitable, they were service dogs. So, to my surprise, the cops came by because someone had made a noise complaint. They were actually quite reasonable and hung about a bit to confirm we were not being noisy or were looking for a free hot dog. I knew it was Karen. I hoped that her plan being thwarted, she would leave us alone, but sometime into the afternoon, when the air was filled with the smell of burgers and chicken, I heard a familiar voice. Karen stood in my backyard shouting at some of my buddies and giving them the same tired lecture on how they were all going to hell. Enough was enough, I thought. No more trying to be nice and avoiding conflict. I had to confront her hard, and I did. I stormed right up to her and with my best parade voice started shouting back at her and telling her it was not okay for her to come onto my property and harass my friends. We must have looked pretty imposing, 10 of us standing around her, our highly trained dogs growling, but it was all just a show. She retreated with her tail between her legs and left us alone for a little while anyway. Someone called out that Karen was marching up my driveway, armed. I panicked. I thought I had pushed too hard and she was coming with a gun. Kids were hurried inside by our wives and the rest of us instinctively spaced out around the garden. Karen then came into the backyard, eyed me right away and raised a small can of bear spray. If you've never heard of bear spray, even just being in the proximity of it is enough to make your eyes water. The stuff is worse than mace, it is for bears. I'll also tell you this, never approach a serviceman with any kind of outward aggression when their service dog is nearby. Naru, bless her, started barking and growling. This triggered the other 5 service dogs. Karen did not seem at all fazed as she let loose with her spray. Fortunately, Karen missed most of the dogs, but like I said, just being in the proximity of the stuff is enough to send you reeling. The dogs all whimpered and backed off, leaving Karen coming at me with a hammer. She did not make it very far and I still don't get what she was hoping to achieve, but before she could make it 2 steps, everyone jumped Karen and disarmed her. Karen was absolutely raging at this point, especially mad about the fact that her little plan did not work. With a smug grin in her face, she screamed that we hurt her, she got a small scratch on her elbow, and that she will call the police and get us arrested. We did not have to put up with her shouting and rambling for too long when the cops came to pick her up. Let's just say, it did not work out as planned for her. The cops did not really believe her, and why would they? Last I heard, she was gonna be facing a long term for animal cruelty, trespassing, and such. I got a restraining order against her too, just in case, not a big one, just enough to make sure she cannot even walk around half of her house. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, considering that Karen is supposedly a pacifist, she seemed pretty violent. Shouldn't pacifists act peaceful or something? I guess Karen should look up the word in the dictionary. The next one is titled, Karen Attacks Doctor. So I am a physician and obviously things have been a bit crazy lately. I've been doing telemedicine during my downtime for a large company, since many people cannot get in to see their doctors. The way it works is that there's a virtual queue of patients. And by the way guys, I guess this story was happening during the pandemic. So the next patient pops up, the next available doctor takes the consult. We cannot choose who we see. We cannot access any other chart except for the one we are consulting on, so I call the next patient that pops up. He tells me that he is fine, but he wants to consult for his wife. She's not registered as a patient with the service, but in his words, I figured it would be quicker to do it this way. I explained to him that I cannot consult on a patient who is not registered and I cannot document one person's information in another patient's chart. In addition, if a prescription is needed, I cannot electronically prescribe for a patient whose chart I'm not in and doesn't even exist. So then he starts telling me about her problem. I ask him to please stop as I cannot consult her. Then wife picks up the phone and starts telling me her problem. I explain the situation again. She starts yelling, "So you don't even want to hear what's wrong with me? What about your Hippocratic oath?" I tell her that no, I actually don't want to hear what's wrong with her because I cannot help her. She needs to register as a patient like everyone else and I have a line of 200 other patients waiting for a callback. And this is not an exaggeration, by the way. Her choices are register with the service or call her regular doctor. Or urgent care if it is an urgent situation. She starts yelling, "What's your name? Tell me your name. Tell me your click." I'll say that this is the unparalleled beauty of telemedicine, the ability to hang up on someone. But seriously, doctors and nurses are working our asses off right now and doing our best. Don't give me your "let me speak to your manager" attitude today, Karen. And yeah, Ripe Star, seriously, the profession of being a doctor or working anywhere in a medical field really must be one of the most stressful jobs anyway, especially during the pandemic, and then having to deal with people like Karen must be the icing on the top. Really big props to these people, I would have collapsed. Anyway, if you enjoyed today's stories, please don't forget to like the video because that would help me tremendously. And now let's continue with the next one. This one is titled "Karen Gets What She Wants." I was working for a well-known warehouse membership-only retail company about 6 or 7 years ago as an AM stocker. Their standard policy is to rotate managers every so many years. So we got this one stupid manager, BAM, who allegedly pulled the gender card to get promoted, and she really acted like the type. Just to give you an idea of the type of person I'm talking about, she was a serious mega Karen. Among all kinds of new rules she was making up out of nowhere to presumably show dominance over us and our supervisors was a rule implemented immediately that all cardboard from stocking had to go on these 2x1 meter long orange flatbed cards instead of in regular shopping carts. Keep in mind, we started at 4 AM and that I was stocking the liquor section on the other side of the warehouse from the cardboard hole, and all my cardboard was small and did not stack. This rule did not work for me and I was just not having it. I started my tasks and started chucking my cardboard in a cart anyway. BAM came by to remind me to use a flatbed. I calmly and rationally explained and demonstrated why it didn't work for me. She said to do it anyway, so I picked up the cart full of cardboard and placed it on the flatbed sideways and absolutely filled the sucker until it was taller than I was by wedging huge sheets of cardboard in the sides and filling the middle with the small stuff. Skip forward 2 hours when I had left this absolute monstrosity out during lunch and I was coming back. Bam is yelling into a walkie-talkie for my supervisor Andy to come back and to look what I had done. I was in the next aisle straightening something and trying not to laugh out loud. Andy comes back and he is visibly trying not to laugh while Bam screams about writing me up. He calls me over and I just calmly say, "Well, it's on the flatbed, I don't see the problem." BAM storms off and my manager did not write me up. That was definitely one of my most satisfying days working there. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you have ever gotten revenge at your workplace on someone, whether it be a coworker or even a manager/boss, please let us know in the comments because I would love to hear your story. And the next one is a little bonus malicious compliance story. Another person's tale of ruthless management IT restrictions that make no sense reminded me of my own malicious compliance for computers. Here is my tale. When I was a young engineer, I worked for a consumer product company doing process development work. After a year or so there, they finally cobbled together a comprehensive IT plan. Vice presidents and above were allowed laptops, technical people got workstations. Except I traveled up to 50% of the time. So I often went a week without computer access, and meanwhile I would see VPs traveling who would leave their laptop behind when they did. One of the aforementioned VPs would handwrite notes on printed emails to you and send them via inter-office mail. My inside guy said that IT didn't want marketing to have laptops because they were flighty and lost / had too many stolen ones. This was also pre-9/11 when getting a laptop stolen at airport security was a thing. This same IT guy had also told me that IT didn't want anything to do with my industrial computers and systems. He was adamant that it wasn't in his budget or expertise. October came around and I hatched a plan. I had a particular process that needed temperatures to be taken. It was a pretty simple thing, 4 output streams and you could measure them by hand. I figured why not automate it. I priced out a decent laptop and a simple serial data logger from Omega. I checked my budget lines and found out that I had a few accounts with money to move around. Armed with my quotes, I go down to the comptroller's office and ask her to cut a PO for me. She smiled at me and said, You wouldn't be trying to buy a laptop, would you? No, it's a data logger. It's basically a thermometer. Oh, I see. Let me check to see if there are other budget spots open and I will get back to you. Later on, she called me down to her office. Make sure you get a thermometer that doesn't go obsolete and has all the thermometer software you need. I was good friends with the comptroller because I had the ability to spend money at a moment's notice. See, when other people around the building did not use their budget or all of it by year's end, that money would be surrendered back to corporate. Then the next year would roll around and you would have to fight to get it back, much less increased. So there was always a push to use the budget up so the overall budget did not shrink. So I asked her how much could I spend. I think you need to write a capital request. I can find 5,000 or 6,000. So I went and spec'd the best, fastest laptop I could. I titled the request Continuous Data Acquisition and Process Monitoring System. I stuck all the temperature probes, DAC board and other specs under the request sheet. I found every technical sheet I could and padded the folder for the request to make it look like $5,000 worth of equipment. I put a single line for industrial computer at the end. At the level of request, it only needed to be signed by my boss, her and the division head. My boss knew exactly what I was up to, and her signature generally meant a rubber stamp by the division head. After everything came, I set it up, ran a few tests on my process and got enough data to analyze 1,000 times over. As was customary, we put inventory tags on it, citing the CAR number and a simple description of thermo. I ended up having to travel to one of our plants, so I went down to IT guy. Hey, can you put Lotus Notes on here so I can get my email while I travel? Wait, where did you get a laptop? It's not just a laptop, I use it for data logging. It's a thermometer, as I pointed to the inventory tag. He started laughing. And that is how I spent over $5,000 in the mid-90s on a thermometer. And the next one is titled Neighbor Had My Brother's Car Towed on Our Property. I am pretty annoyed because this happened just a few hours ago. Anyway, to set the stage, the players are me, my neighbor, who from here on in will be referred to as Nosy Old Bat, NOB for short, and yes, she is an entitled boomer. Her husband, nice neighbor, my brother, mentioned rather than involved, and my grandmother. For some backstory, NOB and I both live on corner houses next to a busy street, which is relevant to the story. And oh man, is this lady bordering on r/insane people level of crazy and nosy, because oh my god, she is nuts. I have lived in this house my entire life with my grandmother. I am 28 and where I live it is hard to live on your own, especially in the virus pandemic situation going on now and being temporarily out of work because finding work that is disabled accommodating is a pain. Especially when you have asthma and people are paranoid that an asthmatic has the virus. I get it, but it is tiring to explain that no, I don't have the virus, I have asthma and I cannot infect anyone with my bad lungs. And NOB used to watch me for a little bit when I was 6 until my aunt could pick me up to babysit me. This apparently has given her the mindset that she can attempt to control my life and tattle on me to my grandma, who nowadays knows when I have company, and if a friend parks in a driveway, I call or text her to let her know and ask her to let me know when she will be home so I can tell my friend that they need to move their car, unless grandma tells me that it is fine and she will park on the side of the street, which she does occasionally even if there's no one in the driveway. A non-issue, right? Not to OB. She has been known to get up in my business to go and knock on my door and demand to know who is there, and if I am doing the nasty with those friends, I am asexual, so it is hilarious to me when people ask if I am sleeping around, but it is infuriating when NOB asks this because she is nosy AF and thinks she practically owns the neighborhood due to the aforementioned corner houses and acts as if this is an HOA. It is not, thank everything, and she is in charge, as should we be because of our house on the other corner. She makes calls on other people's behalves constantly, we are no different. Anyway, dressing the stage aside, the story of the title. Alright, so my little brother is a Marine and is currently deployed in Hawaii, and his car has been on our property for a while now because, well, he cannot come and drive it since he is in Hawaii. This apparently gives her the idea to call a tow truck because it has not been moved since he left it. It is not even a terrible looking car either, but I guess it annoyed her that it was sitting there due to it being a car she did not know. My grandmother's now dead truck has been there longer, but NOB knows whose it is because she has seen her drive it. This happened between the time my grandma and I left for Costco and the time we got home. NOB called the towing company to tow my brother's car because, in her batty old boomer logic, after my grandma went over to her house to confront her,
it has been there for over 2 weeks and it is just sitting there.
On our property, not hurting anything. Her husband, nice neighbor, as crotchety as he can be, was unaware his wife did this because he likely was not home, so he had said that he wasn't sure when he talked to us. So now my grandma has to call the police and the towing company to get the car back, and she is rightfully furious, as am I, about this because it means another towing fee that was completely unnecessary. She cannot even get it until tomorrow because nothing is even open. She was met with voicemails of the towing not even being open either, which was bizarre before 7 PM, but whatever, I don't know the towing hours since we haven't had to deal with that before. I absolutely hate NOB with a seething and unholy passion because this is not the first time she has attempted this garbage either. She has done this on other neighbors because she thinks she can police the neighborhood because of her corner house logic. I don't care how rude this makes me, but I will not be paying that towing fee and I will not be letting my grandma pay it. NOB will be paying that because it was none of her business to be nosing her old face into things. I don't care if you are old, you don't stick your nose in someone else's business and life. Especially if the thing in question is on someone else's property. I will take this woman to court if she refuses to pay for this because she had no right to do this. I mean, what was my brother supposed to do? Be all like,
"Oh hey guys, it's been 2 weeks, let me go back to my grandma's and drive my car around the block. I'll be back on Monday with all the flights."
Yeah, as if his CO would allow for that just because of NOB. I will give updates if anything further happens because yeah, I'm furious and don't really care if the old woman does not want to pay it, she will or face court for her nosiness. Update, my cranky and tired butt marched over to her house, she was awake and outside, and ripped a new one into her about keeping her nose in her own stuff and to pay for the towing, or I was gonna take it higher up and nail her for illegally having it towed. She is paying for the tow truck reluctantly. I have not slept, thanks insomnia, you're a pal, so I have no Fs to give about being cordial or polite with this. Entitled people need to mind their own business and leave people alone. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you did, I would very much appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and maybe leave a comment as well as like the video if you enjoy my content. Thank you so much in advance, and I will see you again tomorrow.